Hi, welcome back to Rambling Roxy's Adventures Through History. Today we're going to continue talking about early Ohio settlement by the colonists, and we're going to kind of continue on from there. So after the Treaty of Paris was signed in 1763, that's what ended the French and Indian War, so the war between Great Britain and France over Ohio and the surrounding territories. Once that treaty was signed, Great Britain put into place the Proclamation of 1763. This prohibited colonists from settling west of the Appalachian Mountains, probably hoping to avoid more expensive wars. Because there was so much fighting going on between the Native Americans and the settlers, they just were kind of hoping to avoid further conflict. So they just said, you know what, let's just not settle west of the Appalachian Mountains. You guys have 13 colonies here, let's stick with those. Well, this sort of ended the Ohio Company, since their whole purpose of becoming a company was to sell their land in Ohio. That kind of ended that company. So was that it? Well, Ohio was settled by English-speaking people, and we are part of the U.S., so clearly the proclamation didn't end the push west. Many colonists were upset over these new rules and taxes, so they declared independence from Great Britain in 1776. I remember that, 4th of July. After many years of fighting, the colonists won and were able to get around the Proclamation of 1763 and settle Ohio. Since they weren't part of Great Britain anymore, they were kind of free from those treaties and proclamations, and they could kind of do what they wanted as a government. And they decided they wanted to continue to push west and move into the Ohio Territory. And actually much of the land in Ohio was promised to American Revolutionary soldiers who fought for the Americans, and they didn't really have any way of paying them. So their way of paying back some of the colonists that had been fighting was to give them lands in Ohio. Now, why do you think everyone wanted so much land? Well, many of the colonists who had been from England, much of England at this time had been settled for many centuries, and the only people who owned land were people who were very, very wealthy. And everyone else kind of lived as farmers on the land or in small villages, but they had to pay rent. They had to pay rent for their farm, they had to pay rent for the house that they lived in, and these rents were kind of high. And there was no way for them to earn more money to kind of make up for that and buy their own land. There just wasn't any land available to buy and to kind of start their own family. So many of them came to America in hopes of being able to have their own land, to grow whatever they wanted on their land, and to be able to make a profit on it and not have to pay such high taxes to the owners of the land. So that's the reason why they all wanted to keep going west. However, there's some other people who wanted to go west for different reasons. Before the war ended, some Moravians, a religious group from the Czech Republic, were living along the East Coast, and they were pacifists. That means they didn't believe in war. And since a major war was being fought in their backyard, the American Revolution, they decided to relocate to Ohio. They didn't want to have to take sides for Great Britain or the colonists who were starting America. And sometimes if you didn't pick a side, then either side would kind of could do things to you. So they just wanted to move away from that whole conflict because they didn't want to be involved in fighting. So they settled with the Delaware Indians, hoping to spread Christianity, and established Shroenbrunn village in 1762. This means beautiful spring in German. Their founder, David Zeisberger, was also a translator and helper to the Native Americans. So they got along well with the Delaware Indians and seemed to have pretty friendly relations. They built the first church and schoolhouse in the state, along with 17 log cabins, and created a code of laws. Sadly, this settlement didn't last long, and the group had to be rescued. Remember, they're the first people coming to live in Ohio. There weren't any towns or anything set up for trade. They had to make and do everything themselves, which is very hard and difficult. Imagine if you're going for a walk in the woods and you just keep walking and you had to make everything for yourself. If you needed food, you'd have to like go get it yourself. If you wanted a place to stay for the night, you'd have to make it. That's a very difficult way of living. So it's not surprising that this venture was not as successful. The original structures have fallen over time, but there is a museum and buildings to visit today. There's also some beautiful gardens. So if you want something to do this spring, you can go head out to Shroenbrunn Village and kind of get a look-see of what life was like in 1772 in Ohio and what kind of things they were planting in their garden. So thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos.